So good morning, everybody. My name is Reverend Dr. Ron Fox, and I'd like to welcome you to the Sunday service for the Center for Spiritual Living Space Coast. And if there's anybody watching this that has never been to a Center for Spiritual Living before, we believe there's one God, many paths to that God, and we're here to love, honor, and support you no matter what your divine path is. And the Center for Spiritual Living Space Coast is a safe haven for people of all beliefs and lifestyles, whoever you are, and wherever you find yourself on your journey of faith, you're welcome here. And so this morning, to begin our service, my wife Becky, who's a practitioner emeritus, will open us with a prayer, and then one of our congregants, Ed Powers, will do a spiritual reading for us.
And so let's all get comfortable in our chairs, wherever we're sitting, and just release all the activities of this morning. And just bring our awareness right here, right now, in this place of love. This divine spirit that is all in all knowing, all powerful, and everywhere present. And I'm knowing that this infinite spirit is present right here within me. That this infinite spirit is expressing itself so easily through me, as me, and for me. And I'm knowing this for each person right now. That each one of us is a channel, a vessel for this infinite love. And so right now I'm knowing that infinite spirit is expressing itself, its love, this morning through each one of us, connecting our hearts to one another. We are one in divine spirit. There is no separation. And I'm knowing that this wonderful divine spirit is expressing itself so easily through Reverend Dr. Ron's message this morning. That it is a guiding force in Reverend Ron's message. Bringing our consciousness into gratitude, into compassion, into love. And so for this and so much more, I just give thanks for this morning. I give thanks for the holiday that is coming up, being so grateful for everything that is before us. I release it, let it go, I claim it, know that it is done. And so it is.
Good morning. I had a thought the other day, nothing new, that's come up several times before, yet this time it was more. It sort of blossomed. I'm sure most of us have heard or had the thought that God loves us. But taking that a bit further, what is God? God is everything. Therefore, everything loves us. We're living our lives inside the mind and heart of God. So there are no mistakes here. Even when a situation seems difficult and there's this feeling of fear, be grateful for that. That fear is good. It's a sign that we're learning and getting stronger. Everything plays toward the greater good. You can only gain in a world where there is only God. So look around, not just the people, the chairs love us, the building loves us, your plants love you, your cat, your car, your money, animals, the entire universe. Be grateful and feel the love. It's all around you. You're wearing it.
Thank you, Ed. So good morning again. And my title for the message today is Being Grateful in Difficult Times. And I want to begin with a quote from Ernest Holmes, who founded the Centers for Spiritual Living. He wrote, "We are to come to life not dragging our burdens and woes to hurl into the face of the infinite, but gently we are to lay them down at the altar of our faith as we turn from the valley of our previous despair. So I want to tell you a fable that I read this week. And the fable is about a stonemason who hates his job. He works really long hours for not much pay, and he doesn't feel that he's really appreciated for what he does. And one day he thinks to himself, I wish I was a rich man and I could loaf around all day. And he hears a voice that says, you are what you want to be. And he becomes a rich man. And he's got a beautiful house and great food, and everything in his life is just wonderful. And he's enjoying it. And one day he sees the king drive by, and he says, wow, there's somebody who's so powerful. I wish I were the king. And he becomes the king. And he's the most powerful man in the world. And he's happy for a while. And one day he's out basking in the sun, and he says, wow, this sun is so powerful and so beautiful. I wish I were the sun. And he becomes the sun. And he's big, and he's strong, and he's bright, and he's digging it. And one day, after he's there a while, a cloud comes by and it blocks the sun's rays from the landscape. And he realizes, wow, clouds can move around. And he hears the voice again, you are what you want to be. And he becomes a cloud. And he enjoys life as a cloud for a while. And then one day, the rain in the cloud is released, and it falls on a giant rock of granite. And he thinks to himself, wow, that rock, that granite is really powerful. I wish I were a rock. And he becomes a granite rock, and he's enjoying it for a while. And one day he hears a man walking, scraping along with his hammer. And it's a stonemason. And the stonemason hits the rock. And our guy says, wow, he feels dismay. And he says, wow, that stonemason is even stronger than I am. I wish I were a stonemason. And he becomes a stonemason. And the point of the story is it moves us from dissatisfaction to gratitude, from I want this, I want that, to being happy and thankful for what we have. We become one with what we're given, and that is what makes life worth living. William Blake once wrote, gratefulness is heaven itself. You know, we have a choice. We can be grateful in every moment of our life. And Piero Ferrucci tells a story in one of his books about his son. And his son spent a lot of money that he had saved on a model airplane. And when he saw it, the box looked great. That's why he ordered it. And so when the model airplane comes, the box still looks great, but when he opens it up, what's inside isn't nearly as nice as what's on the box. And so the son becomes disillusioned, and he puts it away. And a couple of days later, one of his friends comes over and sees it, and he says, wow, what a beautiful plane. And look at those colors. And he says, you're so lucky to have that. And so they take it out and they put it together and they play with it for hours. And Ferrucci says, what began as a ripoff became a treasure. You know, in life, we can get a bad diagnosis. We can have somebody we love get sick. We can lose a job. We can get divorced. The fact is, we don't have to like what life hands us, but we do have to surrender to it and know that right in the middle of it is spirit. That makes it, at least for me, it does a lot easier to handle the difficult times because I know I'm not alone and that I have the power of spirit right there. Wherever I am, God is with me. So Lynn Robinson is a lady that's a writer and a counselor. And she decided when she was in her mid 30s to go back to school to get a master's in education. So she does it, and it's way more difficult than she thought. And she's overwhelmed. She's filled with self-pity. She feels lonely. She's older than all the other kids in the class, all the other people in the class. And she keeps saying to herself, this is 3 years out of my life. You hear that? This is 3 years out of my life. And one day she's meditating and the thought comes to her, it's not 3 years out of my life, it's 3 years of my life. And it's my choice to make this a fun experience or an awful one. And she began to see it as a new adventure. She was determined to be grateful for it. And so what do we see? What happened? It became a new experience for her because she had a change in attitude. When she changed her attitude, the whole experience became an adventure and became fun. Melody Beattie once wrote, gratitude unlocks the fullness of life. It turns what we have into enough and more. It can turn a meal into a feast, a house into a home, a stranger into a friend. Gratitude makes sense of our past, brings peace for today, and creates a vision for tomorrow. So I'm going to stop here for a minute or so, not a minute, but a bit. And I want to ask you and let you think about this. So what are you grateful for today? What are you grateful for right now? You know, no matter what the circumstances, you can live your life with joy. Joy is an inside job. You don't have to wait for the perfect circumstances and the perfect conditions to feel joy and to feel gratitude. So let me tell you a Yiddish proverb. If you cannot be grateful for what you have received, then be grateful for what you've been spared. And in one of his books, the late Rabbi Byron Sherwin gives a couple of examples. And in one of them, he talks about living in Chicago. And he walks down this particular street where there are a lot of homeless people begging. And he said most people pass by all of them, except for one particular person who has this sign out. And a lot of people stop and drop money into his basket. And so one day, Rabbi Sherwin went and read what his sign said. And this is what it said. It said, I was once like you, but one day you might be like me. So help me, please. And then he writes about the philosopher Goethe, who was in Rome by St. Peter's. And there, again, were a bunch of homeless people begging. And one of them had a sign that enticed people to stop and drop money in his basket. And here's what his sign said. The flowers and trees are in bloom, but I am blind. So here's the question. Do we have to lose our sight to be grateful for our sight? Do we have to suffer a loss before we can appreciate what and who are precious to us. You know, not taking for granted the daily blessings in our lives is important because it instills in us an attitude of gratitude in everything we do in life. Let me give you another example that Rabbi Sherwin talks about. A deranged man went into a school one day, and this is a true story, and just started spraying bullets, and he killed 3 children. And this is what one of the fathers whose daughter was spared, this is what he wrote. He said, "I hug my child a lot more these days. I never before realized how much I loved her and how glad I am she is in my life. Unfortunately, it took a tragedy for me to realize what I already should have known." Now, I read an article this week about the survivors of Katrina, and there were 4 qualities that the people who survived Katrina seemed to have above and beyond people that weren't as successful in surviving. And here are the 4 qualities. The first one is faith, a belief in something that's bigger than they are. The second one was hope. They believed no matter what is happening in my life right now, it's going to get better. The third thing they believed in was love, feelings of love from and towards them. And the fourth thing that they believed in was gratitude, being grateful for things that they had rather than wishing or complaining about their problems. So I want to tell you about an exercise that another rabbi, Rabbi Zelik Plishkin, had, and I'm going to share it with you in a minute. But the background for it is, he said that a key element in why people lack gratitude is because they take things for granted when we get used to them. So when we get used to something in our life, we kind of take it for granted and we lose the gratitude for it. So here's his exercise. He said, try this. Choose a day to take nothing, to not take anything for granted. He said, look at everything in your life as if it were new. Look at all you own and look at it as if you just bought it or you just received it. So I stopped there. When I read that, I stopped there. So my desk in this, we've moved to a smaller place, and my desk is what was our dining room table. And I thought about it when we bought the dining room table and chairs that we have. We were walking in Encinitas, California, and we saw them in the window of a store, and it was what do you call that kind of a store again? A consignment store. And we walked in, and it was just gorgeous. The table was on the stand, and the chairs were good. And I just remember when we bought it and we took it home, how thrilled I was to have this gorgeous table. And now I work on it every day, and I don't think about it like that. Or I literally got up and walked over to some of the chairs we have in our living room, and how happy I was to get brand new leather chairs and couch. And now they're old, and one of the chairs is a little bit ripped. But it got me back to the feelings of such gratitude to have them and to feel them in my life. Think about just another example that I'm sure a lot of you have shared. You get a new car and you get that new car smell, and every time you get in there, wow. And then the smell disappears and the car is, it's just my car. You know what I mean? And he said, the rabbi said, look at what you have as if it was just invented and you're one of the first people to have it. He said, hopefully, if you can do that, what you'll experience is what it's like to not take things for granted. Helen Keller once wrote, "Everything has its wonder, even darkness and silence. And I learn, whatever state I may be in, therein to be content." So think about this. I saw something else, a blog somebody wrote this week, and it had 10 things that we can be grateful for. Think about these things: your family, your friends, clean water, food, clothes, connecting with other people, music, movies, books, yourself, and all your skills and all the talents that you bring to life. So Jack Cornfield is a Buddhist teacher. And he wrote somewhere that a Buddhist prayer is, "Bring me challenges and obstacles." And he said, life entails 10,000 joys and 10,000 sorrows. And he said, think of some of the joys that we have: the colors in a sunset, the taste of a tangerine. And I have to tell you, right before I read that, I had taken a break and eaten a tangerine. And so it really brought it home, the sweet taste of a tangerine. He said the beauty of life all around us. And he said we can choose to either get lost in fear or we can bring gratitude to life. He said he had a meditation teacher who once said to him, "Where have you learned more compassion? Where have you learned where your heart has grown wiser? In having good times or in going through difficulties?" Panache Desai is a spiritual teacher. And a few years ago, he was with Oprah on Oprah's TV Super Soul Sunday. And he talked to Oprah and he said, tough times are an opportunity. Don't resist them. Look at the tough times and see what they're here to teach you. Embrace it. And he said, looking back, you'll find that it was a pivotal moment. A tough time, a difficult time was a pivotal moment in your own development. And believe that you're a part of the divine, because when you know that, no matter what comes in your life, if you believe that you're part of God, no matter what comes, it'll be okay, because you can trust that what's ever happening is leading to something greater. So I want to tell you a story about Becky and me and Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving is my favorite holiday. And when we lived in Southern California, both my sons were there, my daughter was there, and Thanksgiving was a big day for me. Becky does so much for me that Thanksgiving used to be my day to cook everything. And my daughter would come over with her husband, and she only had one child then, and her child, and her husband's mom and dad would come over, and my sons would sometimes bring a friend. So one time we had 18 people over, and I would cook 2 turkeys. I would do everything, and I loved it. And even when we moved to Northern California, my daughter was close enough that at least she would come, when I think once we went there. And then we moved to Phoenix. And as Thanksgiving was coming, I got really depressed. And I said, it's just going to be us. And I love Becky, but it was like, no family. It's going to feel lonely. And then one of us, I don't remember which one, honestly, I think it was me, but it could have been Beck, got the idea, why don't we invite all our congregants that have nothing to do to come over, and we'll still do the same kind of Thanksgiving. And so we did that. And people came, and it turned out great. And we did. In fact, we kept doing it even here. And but what was so beautiful about it was there was so much bonding, and there was so much fun, and you get to see people in a different light. And after a while, even though we told people we'll do it all, people started to bring dishes and said, we'll do this, we'll do that. And people would get together and say, can I get that recipe? Or I didn't know what a good cook you were. It turned out to be fabulous. And then one year, one of our congregants who was studying to be a practitioner came to me, and she said, this year at your Thanksgiving dinner in your house, Jeff and I would like you to do us a favor. And I said, what? And she said, we'd like you to marry us. And I said, really? In my house on Thanksgiving? And she said, yeah. You want to know why? And I said, yeah, I was going to ask. And she said, because last year at Thanksgiving in your house, that's where we met. And this year we want to celebrate it with all of the people that are going to be there and have you do our wedding. Ernest Holmes once wrote, life will be to you what you are to it. So I want to tell you a story about Irma Bombeck. I'm sure most of you know who she was, the late Irma Bombeck. Irma had breast cancer, and she had a mastectomy. And she wrote that before the surgery, she was okay. After the surgery, reality hit her. And she said, every time I took a shower, I would break down crying, looking at what my body looked like now. And I would think to myself, my days at the beach are over. And she would snap at her husband and tell him, you don't get this. This isn't some little scab from a wart. And one time she went to her doctor, and the doctor saw that she was upset. And he said, I think it's time for my, you better be grateful that you're alive speech. And he said, Irma, you're one of the lucky ones. Your cancer was small. Your lymph nodes were clear. And because you caught it early, you're going to live. You're going to have a long life. And she said, after that, I began to appreciate the power of gratitude. And every time I forgot to feel gratitude, I'd hear the voice of an 8-year-old girl named Christian, who had cancer of her nervous system. And one day, somebody said to Christian, what would you like for your birthday? And she said, Christian thought long and hard about it and finally said, well, I don't know. I have 2 sticker books and I have a Cabbage Patch doll. I have everything. And Bombeck said, the kid was right. So I want to close with something from the prophet. There are those who give little of the much with which they have, and they give it for recognition, and their hidden desires makes their gifts unwholesome. And there are those who have little and give it all. These are the believers in life and the bounty of life. Their coffer is never empty. There are those who give with joy, and that joy is their reward. And there are those who give with pain, and that pain is their baptism. And there are those who give and know not pain in giving, nor they seek joy, nor give with mindfulness of virtue. They give as in yonder valley, the myrtle breathes its fragrance into space. Through the hands such as these, God speaks, and from behind their eyes, he smiles upon the earth. God bless you. Thank you for being here. Have a fabulous Thanksgiving.